In the words of Mother Teresa of Calcutta, love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we take in these bodies, in this life, it is not about how much we do, but how much love we put into the doing. May this flame burn as a reminder not of the tasks before us, but the depth of our devotion that extends not only to all those within the warm embrace of these walls, but so very, very far beyond them. What does it mean to welcome truly? It means saying that this place is not mine, but ours. That this place is a home for those of us who have been here for 40 years and a home for those of us who have arrived in this moment for the very first time. This morning, we have the honor and the delight of not just being us here at River Road, but welcoming the world changers and the justice builders with the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, including my dear friend, Reverend Mary Katherine Morn, who's been leading the service committee with so much heart. Some of you might remember Mary Katherine preached the sermon at my installation right here over 10 years ago, and it was a humdinger, and we're just so glad to have you back in this pulpit. And the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, who'll be leading part of our service today and serves on the board of the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. Our partners at the UUSC have a commitment to advance human rights and social justice around the world, which means that what they do and what we do together amplifies the values that we live out in this place in ways that we cannot see every day, but know make our faith more real in the world. I also want to welcome anybody who is on the board or a volunteer or a leader with the UUSC. Could you raise your hands or wave them around, or one of the partners with the UUSC? What a gift to have you all here with us. You'll hear a whole lot more about it. There is a table right out in the narthex, and you can mingle and chat and find out so much more about what it means to advance human rights in this increasingly perilous time. And it is also the beginning of a new month. A month where we announce our new spiritual theme for worship and religious education. To introduce our theme for the month, which is appropriately and perhaps unsurprisingly enough, love, it is my pleasure to introduce Maureen Beasley, who is a member of our board here at River Road. Maureen reminds us through her service that leadership in a faithful community is real, live, spiritual work. It's not just an accumulation of tasks and meetings. She reminds us that in that spiritual work, it takes all of us doing what we can to advance our shared values and commitments for each other and the world. Maureen, floor is yours.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. Well, February is the month of love. And that's a four-letter word susceptible to so many different interpretations. The standard definition comes from the dictionary, an intense feeling of deep affection. But one can feel in so many ways, giving birth to different forms of love. Why, there's romantic love, sexual love, parental love, platonic love, there's puppy love. And then, of course, there is neighborly love, as famously expressed by Christ Jesus in the phrase, love thy neighbor as thyself. And I think that is certainly true of what we are talking about today. This is an organization devoted to making neighbors among all of us diverse people. Of course, there also is agape love, the religious concept that love is unmerited grace. And we need to include the idea of self-love. But to many of us, the most important form of love can be found in personal relationships. As Peter Ustinov put it, love is an act of endless forgiveness, a tender look which becomes a habit. Or as the Chinese philosopher Laozi put it, being deeply loved by someone gives you strength, while loving someone deeply gives you courage. The American journalist Megan McLaughlin summed it up this way: in the arithmetic of love, 1 + 1 equals everything, and 2 - 1 equals nothing. Thank you.
What does it take to love so deeply that that love compels us to change the world? What does it take to love so deeply that you can save the life of someone you never met? Guiding us through those questions, the real ones, the deep ones, the hard ones, and the prophetic leadership of those who came before and those who serve today, let's learn a little bit more about our partners at the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. First, from a video that takes us back to the forming years and the forming courage of a love that for so many decades has not let the people go, has not let the people down, and has not ever let we, the people, off the hook. and moving on to leadership from Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson, talking about what it takes to be a prophet and a leader formed in love today.
Hello. Today I want to tell you a story about how the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, or UUSC, began. It all started over 80 years ago when Unitarians in the United States were watching what was happening in Europe, and they were getting very worried. They were worried because a man named Hitler and the people he was leading, called the Nazis, were becoming very powerful and hurting a lot of people. The Nazis believed some very mean and wrong things. They believed the only people who were any good were people who were just like them. They wanted everyone to be the same as they were. And if you weren't, well, they would kick you out of your house, they would take all of your things, they wouldn't let you work, and eventually, they started killing people who they thought were different from them. Jewish people, gay people, people with disabilities, all of them were targets of the Nazis during this time. It was very scary. What do you think you would do if you saw something like this happening? Would you want to help? Would people in your UU community want to help too? It was the same over 80 years ago. The Unitarians wanted to help people in Europe who were being targeted by the Nazis. So, a Unitarian minister and his wife from Wellesley, Massachusetts, Waitstill and Martha Sharp, went to Europe to see how they could help people there. They found lots of ways to help when they got there, but they had to be creative because the Nazis were always watching, and it would be dangerous if they got caught. The Sharps helped get the paperwork people needed to escape to safer places. Sometimes they would even sneak people past guards wearing disguises. They also helped people, including kids like you, get food and clothing in a time when it was very hard to find both. The Sharps were very brave, but they didn't do this work alone. They worked with people in the Jewish communities in Europe. They worked with the other Unitarians in the United States who sent them money and other supplies so more people could be helped. That is how the Unitarian Service Committee, now called UUSC, got started. Today, UUSC still works around the world to help people who are being treated badly find safety and have their human rights respected. We work with migrant communities who fled their homes in Central America and are seeking asylum in the United States. We work with Rohingya Muslims in Burma who are facing inhumane treatment and displacement by their government. We work with people around the world whose home communities are threatened by climate change, and many more. Both back then and today, UUs come together through the UU Service Committee to work with people who need it most. And we will continue to be there to help in the future, because Unitarian Universalists believe in doing what we can to make the world a better and safer place for everyone. Thank you for the ways you help us do this work. We couldn't do it without everyone joining together. Thank you for listening to this story.
So I get to tell you now a story about prophetic voices. And you might know that a prophetic voice, or a person with a prophetic voice, is somebody who tells us the truth about how the world is and inspires us to do something about it. And so this is not a story about me, except it is a little bit a story about me. I first got started working with the UU Service Committee as a program leader for the College of Social Justice. I would lead service learning or service experience learning trips, mostly for teenagers, so that we would go to a place in the world or a place in our country and learn about the justice work that they were doing there, and then really reflect on how that work fit into our own faith. Most of us were Unitarian Universalists, but not all of us. And then we would think about how we could go home and take what we learned to inspire people in our own communities to do more work for justice. And so one of the more memorable trips that I did was with young people at the border in Arizona. We got to see what happened when people were arrested at the border and taken through the court system. We got to meet with and talk to regular families who were helping people as they were passing through. We got to leave water for people traveling in the desert. And for most of those young people and for myself, that kind of learning and that kind of experience was one of the more transformational in my life. And since the beginning of COVID, we haven't done that kind of traveling. So lately, I've gotten to tell people in my own congregation about some of the other work, some of the other partners that the service committee is working with. And here is where the really prophetic voice comes in. I got to tell them about our partner, Ineza Grace, in Rwanda. Ineza Grace is a young person like some of you. She was in her 20s when she co-founded the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition. So you might have heard this term, loss and damage, if you've been following or had been following any of the news around COP27, the global climate conference in Egypt a few months ago. Loss and damage is the idea that wealthy countries, the ones who are responsible for so much of the climate and environmental devastation in our world, take responsibility to work with and help solve the problems for those who are most directly impacted. Ineza first thought about climate change and climate disruption when she herself was a girl in Rwanda and her family was forced to leave their home because of floods and wind that displaced them. But it took a while for her to really start to put it together. It wasn't until she started to hear other stories about other young people in her country who were forced to leave their homes because of climate destruction. She says when she started to learn about all of these other families that she felt powerless. But she knew that she was not powerless. She studied environmental engineering at the University of Rwanda. And then in 2020, she helped to found the Loss and Damage Youth Coalition. They bring together young people from the global north and the global south, young people all around the world who are affected by climate change and environmental damage in all kinds of different ways. And they think about the ways that they are all vulnerable. She says that thinking about this vulnerability reminds her that we are all affected, that we're all vulnerable in some way. We would probably talk about that in our congregations as this reminder that we are all interconnected, that we are interdependent with each other. But they also knew that even though we are all vulnerable, we are not all vulnerable in the same way. And so they use their storytelling and their advocacy to show people that they, who are most affected, are the experts on their situation, and that they have ideas to fix the big problems facing their world, but that it's not their responsibility alone to fix the big problems that they didn't create alone. And so they use their power and their storytelling and their advocacy to pressure, to negotiate with those who have more, to do their part. Ineza is, for me, a prophetic voice. She inspires me to remember that I am not powerless, that we are connected, that we are responsible to do our parts, and that we are responsible to each other. And so maybe I am a little bit of a prophetic voice because I get to tell you her story. And hopefully I can inspire you, now that you have heard it, to think about how you can be a prophetic voice. Maybe you can tell other people about Ineza Grace and her story and her work, and even more. Once you know her story, you can think about what it is that you can do in your own community to be responsible to your neighbors that you know and your neighbors in the world who you will never, ever meet. Remembering that we are all interconnected and that we are all joined together in this idea of love that we have heard about. When I tell stories in my own congregation, my prayer for all of us of all ages is a wish that may your roots grow deep, may your branches spread far, may you find the world to be a wonderful place where we are reminded of our power and our connections, and leave it better for those who follow.
Prophets tell the truth about the world as it is and do the work to create the world as it could be. In our religious education classes and in all the ways we connect, we try to give each other tools for exactly that prophetic work. And I want to invite our children, youth, teachers, the whole shebang to head out for your classes. The choir is going to come up to lead us through a hymn and a song that they'll sing. They'll go through the first verse, just them, and then I'll cue all of you, the gathered choir of the congregation, to rise and sing together. So the thing is that the prophets never arrive whole and remain whole, unbroken, unburdened, unwounded, without fear to the work that changes the world. Likewise, no one ever said that to be here in community, we had to have it all together. In fact, we show up in beloved community exactly as we are, carrying our joys and our sorrows, our bewilderment and our fear. We arrive in this place, carrying everything that makes us who we are. And as we continue in our service today, as always, I want to remind you, at any point when you are moved or able and willing, you can come forward to light a candle for the joys and the concerns that live in the silent sanctuary of your own heart. But there are a few that I want to raise for the whole community today. We hold to the degree we can the city of Memphis, that beautiful, amazing, rich, and vibrant city, the family of Tyree Nichols and the community in which he led and created and loved and labored and enjoyed his life and his friendships. We hold the ceaseless effort, the grief that must be named even when there are no words, and the collective whole of the love and the labor and the tears, that they may leave us leaning outward toward a different day. We speak what words we can of the children in our own city. After a deadly shooting at the Metro Center stop just after the new year, we see a spike in gun violence in D.C. that remains unabated as we careen onward into another year. Neither the work nor the worry ceases. The commitment and the witness are ours. We grieve together the passing of beloved River Road leader Virginia Richardson. Virginia arrived in this place in 1984 here at the doors of River Road, and she hit the ground running. There is nary a social justice committee, team, task force, or council that Virginia did not serve on in her life here at River Road, and the networks of friendship and of fellowship that she forged in this place were in fact the hallmark of the last 30 years of her life. Virginia spent the last several years struggling with Alzheimer's disease. Her family came back into this place this week and wept because it looks the same, it smells the same, it holds all the memories of when their mother was her best, her fiercest, her happiest, and her most alive. We also hold up Nancy Cedar, Virginia's very best friend for a very long time, who's been in the hospital this week with vertigo and nausea. Nancy's coming home and welcomes cards and calls. She is as personable and as excited to gossip and chat it up about life here at River Road as ever she was. Feel free to call her if you know her. For this and for so much else, we open our hearts to make a space for every single thing we hold together. As you're able, to the degree that these not always comfortable chairs can allow it, I want to invite you to take a deep breath and a good seat for this time of meditation and of prayer. Spirit of life and source of love, we come together every single Sunday and feel ourselves compelled to speak new words about old struggles. We come together and feel ourselves called to find frameworks of meaning cast over history's ever-expanding story of struggle. We know that the stories we tell of displacement, of refugees, of struggle to survive, of violence, of pain, of reckoning with the racism and oppression, and all the isms that divide us from each other, we know that every story we tell of that today is an echo, a shadow, a continuation of the stories told generation upon generation by those who came before us. Today we ask merely that we meet the ever-present continuation of those stories with something other than exhaustion. Instead, today, may we be reminded that there were prophets in every age, and prophets still to be born in this age. May we be reminded that what peace we can do is enough for today, so long as we do not submit to the sticky residue of exhaustion that will take our yearning, our effort, and our hope and drag it into inaction. May we bless ourselves and each other. In our grief and in our gratitude, may we be enough, and may this hour refresh us for the real sacred work that lies ahead. Amen. People with broken hearts and broken open hearts give because we care. We give in a whole lot of ways. Leadership, like Maureen. Institutional faithfulness, like Kimberly and Mary Catherine and the leaders from the UUSC. Yes, time, talent, and treasure, because giving is an encapsulation of our values. So let's give in all the many ways, not until it hurts, but until it feels good. By now, if you've been here a while, you know the drill. There's a box in the back of the room. There's the website. You can give online. There is that handy-dandy text-to-give number, 73256. That's 73256 for all of you watching at home. We give because we care. We care because our hearts are broken open. In that spirit, let us give deeply and receive in return.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, choir. It has been such a joy, and I am so grateful for the warm, warm welcome we have received. I have received preparing to be together this morning and also arriving here to this sacred and beautiful place, which I love and have loved for a long time. It's a joy to be with you all in worship. It's a special joy to be in worship with some of the leaders of UUSC, our board. These are individuals with great wisdom and who make a great commitment of their time and their treasure and their wisdom, helping UUSC be all that it can be. Thank you, board members. And I also want to say thank you to many of you whose financial support makes UUSC's work in the world possible. On behalf of our staff, our board, and our partners around the world, thank you. And Nancy, speaking of wisdom and commitment, am I right? I am so proud to call you my colleague and to learn from you. Now I learn from a little bit of a distance, but previously, when I was serving a congregation close to here, Nancy and I were in a support group together, and with her and that group, my experience was that I learned how to be a better minister. So thank you so much. In early September, UUSC's head of programs, Rachel Freed, traveled to Hungary and Poland to meet with UUSC partners who are responding to the needs of communities caught in the intersectional oppressions compounded by Russia's invasion and devastating attack on Ukraine. In alignment with our approach to responding in a time of crisis, UUSC is supporting grassroots organizations that are serving communities too often tossed aside by government and international aid responses. In this case, our partners are serving women in and from rural areas in Ukraine, LGBTQI people who face threats not only in the war, but also from so-called humanitarian organizations, people with disabilities, non-ethnic Ukrainian people, often brown and black, also Roma, who are not eligible for much of the support that is being distributed. This is what we mean when we say intersectional oppressions, compounding conditions which create layer upon layer of disadvantage and danger and harm. Our partners in Poland and Hungary asked for support in part to provide a brief time of rest and connection for feminist leaders who are facing unthinkable violence and trauma. Rachel shared on her return what an honor and a joy it was for her to witness the care with which these leaders gathered together to ground themselves once more in the commitments of their activism, to rest for a time, and to connect with each other in support and love. I begin with this small picture of UUSC's work in the world in hopes that we together might hold in our community care, in love, both the unthinkable losses that are happening every single day and the remarkable healing and hope that is born in courageous connection and commitment to justice. I also share this because it is not unlike what we do together, what we strive to do together each week when we gather for worship. Within the container of faith community, we gather to rest from the relentless, pounding, sometimes real, sometimes manufactured demands of our days. We stop just for this hour. We are saying, when we do this, that taking time for connection and meaning making and promise making matters. In this way, we hold one another in the midst of the unthinkable losses. And in this way, we find strength and courage and hope and faith for all that is possible when we lead with love. We find harbor. We offer harbor. Strength, courage, hope, and faith in the midst of unthinkable losses, because more is possible. Just this week, even as we've just marked the 2-year anniversary of the attempted coup in Burma, also known as Myanmar, UUSC has helped our partners from ethnic communities from the eastern part of the country publish a very important, devastating report telling the truth with accounts of the violence and displacement caused by the junta. A few months ago, UUSC staff traveled to the Thai border and visited our grassroots partners there, who, despite the constant threat of bombing and shelling, are doing everything they can to protect their communities. We have a picture, I think, of some of them gathered there near the border. During the visit, UUSC's staff member Myra learned that their food supplies were almost exhausted. For only $25,000, we were able to support the mutual aid groups in purchasing 6 months of rice. For international aid, that is a small grant. And at UUSC, we know that small grants, the deep connections, the power and courage of our partners are all that is needed to create justice. A part of that justice always, not just food for the body, a part of that justice always is amplifying the voices of our grassroots partners to advance systemic change and human rights. We were able just this week to share the stories from the ground in Burma with high-level USAID officials. Sometimes when I share UUSC's mission, I falter a little on the bold proposition that together with partners in the United States and around the world, we are dismantling systems that oppress and advancing human rights for all. I give thanks for the visionaries within UUSC and around the world who will settle for nothing less in our mission. This is the sacred calling we are gathered to nurture today. I appreciate this opportunity, this gift of an opportunity to weave together UUSC's story with your story here at River Road. UUSC works through eye-to-eye, what we call eye-to-eye partnership. This is an expression of our theory of change, and through it we demonstrate our belief that it is in relationships of radical trust and loving connection that change is possible. The power of this kind of authentic and loving connection and action is present in many threads of progressive religious thought. Jewish scholar Martin Buber succinctly and vividly offers a model of loving connection in his notion of I and thou relationship. I can't think of a better way to speak to the theme of love. I and thou relationships. He distinguishes this kind of connection from objectifying and extractive relationship, what he called I and it. When I meet you as thou, I welcome you as a subjective other, worthy and whole in your own right, recognizing the holy within you. When I meet you as it, I am preoccupied by what you are to me, and thereby unable to truly see you at all, not to mention find a loving connection. Relationship within it is transactional, extractive, instrumental, objectifying, like meeting each other as objects, something to use. So don't be surprised if you ask me to just be objective if I scowl just a little bit. I find this distinction so useful. We meet people in this way, objectifying them so often. But we also know what it is like to meet someone in their beauty and worth. We know what it is like to be met in our own beauty and worth. That immediate recognition that we are inexorably connected and that another's thriving is our own thriving. Our faith calls us back again and again to sacred, loving connections and also to the work of repair that is necessary for the times we have failed to meet one another in love. While we experience this individual failure at times, which requires our own spiritual work, this morning it is the systemic failures of connecting in this way that I hope to address. And here it's important to remember that the biggest challenge we face is not one leader or one party or one army even that fails to recognize the human rights of some people. The biggest challenge we face is that the systems by which we are organized in our shared life, politically, economically, and socially, have been designed in no small part to keep us disconnected, to ensure that we forget our kinship, that we all have worth, that we all belong, and that we only thrive when we thrive together. As political theorist Brian Stout has written in his blog, Building Belonging, he says, all domination systems, white supremacy, patriarchy, colonialism, extractive capitalism, all domination systems depend on three things to maintain their power: disconnecting us from ourselves and our bodies, disconnecting us from each other and from community, and disconnecting us from the land and other living beings. And you know, once we are disconnected and disengaged, what happens? We feel powerless. We resign ourselves to powerlessness because truly, when we disengage and isolate ourselves, we are powerless. This is what the UUSC partner Pacific Students Fighting Climate Change are working against. They are Indigenous youth and young adults whose homes and livelihoods and identities are at tremendous risk, as Kimberly described. Some of them are in immediate danger from rising water and saltwater encroachment. They've been advocating for a more proportionate response from global powers for the last decade. A few years ago, during the global youth climate strike, this is where they stood together, proclaiming that we are not drowning, we are fighting. Now they've launched a new campaign born in a classroom conversation at a law school in the Solomon Islands, calling on the UN International Court of Justice to issue an advisory opinion ruling that the climate crisis is a human rights issue. Essentially, the Pacific Island students are saying that by bringing a human rights lens to the climate crisis, we are meeting each other as I and thou, recognizing the wholeness and worth of all, and challenging the transactional, extractive, I and it systems that are making it possible for us to destroy the home we share. Another UUSC partner, FEM in Nicaragua, is building small sustainable economies for women. They live in the midst of horrible violence, the destruction of their livelihoods, largely by North American extractive industries. And in the midst of all of this, They are taking small plots of land, teaching each other regenerative agriculture, and creating change and building healing connections with each other and with the planet. Around the world and with your support, UUSC works with partners to challenge the systems that are forcing us into extractive I and it relationships with each other and with our planet. In rejecting the notion that there is no other way and there's little we can do, FEM, the grassroots groups in Burma, the Pacific students, and many others are building healing, connection, and regenerative economies so that all may flourish and thrive. The Pacific Island students call themselves not only fighters, but stubborn optimists. They are rejecting the cynical notion that there is only a little that we can do, the notion that arises out of our isolation and our disconnection. Yes, they will tell you change is hard. Yes, it is hard to know how we will get there from here. Yes, it will take time to dismantle and rebuild. And together, as we see each other as whole and worthy, we know that nothing but the flourishing and thriving of all is enough. This notion of mutual thriving is woven through the writings of Robin Wall Kimmerer. Her best-known work, which many are familiar with, is Braiding Sweetgrass. I especially love an essay she has written on the topic of what she calls the gift economy. All around us in the natural world, we see regenerative power, a rejection of scarcity. Scarcity is a tool, not a necessity. But when we live in competition and scarcity, we forget the most important theological truth. All of this is a gift. Nothing we have done entitles us to this life or to each other or to any of the gifts of our lives. It's a gift. And when we hoard, when we objectify the giver or the gift, whether a person or a planet, when we treat people as things, commodify what cannot be owned, when we make of the gift an asset, we squash the regenerative nature of life itself and make violence inevitable. And we risk losing it all, which is the inevitable consequence when we objectify each other. So many systems that order our lives politically, economically, and socially are powered by racism, patriarchy, and extractive capitalism. And we, my friends, can resist these systems. We can resist in the form of organizing. We can resist through supporting human rights organizations like UUSC or advocacy through UUSJ. I'm thinking that Virginia's life was a testimony of resistance. We resist through accompaniment and sanctuary. We resist when we install solar panels. Thank you for all of the ways you resist. But my friends, I want to close here. Our most radical, most effective, most important resistance is in the connections we create. When we faithfully, persistently, stubbornly embrace the whole and the holy life around us, we will no longer be able to tolerate the systems that oppress so many. We will no longer tolerate the systems that oppress, and together, in our resistance, we will build economies and worlds of love and justice. We hope you will partner with us in loving justice-making connections. We give thanks for all of the ways you create healing and justice. Every day, we wake to some new glimpse of our world rife with devastation. May we hold each other tenderly in this truth and commit again to our part in healing connection and love and justice. May it be so. Amen.
I mean, Schwai. What are we going to do with you, Schwai? All of it's a gift. All of it's a gift. It's a gift that we create for and with one another. A gift this morning from our incredible musicians, Schwai and Cliff and the choir. A gift from the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, from Kimberly, Mary Katherine, Maureen, and of course, as you all know, even folks who are not a part of River Road but are part of any congregation, it is a gift from the tech crew. And today we got Danny and Ajay and Marsha and Dave. Thank you. Every single thing we do together, including Sunday morning, is an expression of how we want to be together and who we want to be in this world. And you can find out all of the various ways that we are trying to be together in big and loving ways beyond objectification that build real community in our e-weekly. If you want to get the e-weekly, you can drop an email to us in the office and we can set you up with that. There are a few things I want to share today. One, at 11:30, right after coffee hour, which, by the way, is through these doors down the hallway hallway with lots of snacks available if the children have not eaten them yet. At 11:30 after coffee hour, we will have a mural painting party downstairs in the religious education wing. There's an elevator or stairs that you can take down there, and if you don't want to get your beautiful Sunday morning clothes dirty, you can just go down there and watch, because it's really beautiful, the art that our children and youth and religious education program, and indeed any one of you, can help create today. We're also right in the midst of our UUA Common Read for 22-23. The book Mistakes and Miracles, Congregations on the Road to Multiculturalism has rich and important stories about congregations just like us who are trying and failing and starting again at all the various ways we can more fully live our values. You can find out more about the Common Read in the e-weekly. I know we'll be on Zoom. It's Wednesday nights, and you can find out more also by contacting our Educating for Change leaders, Jenny Sauer and Rita Parks, except not Rita, because she's currently in India visiting our partner church, along with Janice Hazelhurst and other River Road leaders who are continuing to build that relationship that has sustained us and sustained Unitarian Universalists in Northeast India for decades. I also want to celebrate the fact that we are on Solar People. The solar panels went live this week. It is an act of labor and love to get us this far. So thank you to every single person who was in every single committee meeting that made that happen. Also, if you were energized, interested, fired up, or confused by our service last week that helped us engage in the questions about how the Unitarian Universalist Association's bylaws that identify how we might articulate our faith, we shared a service about that last week. And if you just want to follow up and be a part of the larger conversation, you can register now for our conversation on March 5th via Zoom, which we're sharing not only with ourselves, but with Cedar Lane UU congregation and the Arlington UU congregation. The process will be long, it'll be thoughtful, and there's room for your feedback, so register now. And I think that is it. It is all a gift, especially when we give that gift to one another and to all those who share our values and are impacted by our values in the world. And so, as we prepare to take this light we have kindled out into the waiting world, go then to be who you already are. You are the beloved children of everything that is sacred in this world and a great many things beyond it, and the goodness and mercy, the joy and the justice, the power and the possibility of the Spirit are at loose in you and through you in the world. So go then, along with them, to be who you already are, and may you be abundantly blessed. Amen.